Awesome. Thanks, Sandra.
Nice. Hello, everyone. My name's Sandra, and I'm a junior software developer from Perth, WA. And I work for a company called Limitless Devs, so very excited to be in Sydney. A little background, so I started in graphic design, more in print and logo and brand, and then kind of got a bit more interested in digital design and more interested in UX and accessibility. So that was kind of what led me down the coding route. My sister did a boot camp and she was like, you need to do this. And so I was like, I need to do that. And so I applied and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to do it. And then 2 months before finishing the boot camp, I was able to get a job as a junior software developer. So I've been in that role for 8 months now. So why am I talking about not hating WordPress? Because I was a fresh-faced, wannabe dev in networking events, and this is what I was hearing about WordPress in the community, general tech community. Like people saying, I hate WordPress, and why would you use it? Like, there's better things to use. And I think we all know now that it's very much a tool that's used all the time. And because of that, I had these misconceptions about WordPress, that it wasn't a popular tool, and I probably wouldn't be using it as a junior dev anyway, so what's the point in learning it, really? But as we know, 43.5% of WordPress is used for the CMS for lots of websites, so it's definitely a tool that needs to be talked about and put in front of junior devs so that they are aware before they enter industry. So basically, I'm just going to talk you through some silly things that I did as a junior working on a first WordPress website. And I guess it's kind of really relevant in terms of the talk that just happened prior to me, because I did not know about staging. So I was doing things in prod. And this was a client that approached us, and they had this really old site, and that's the long list of outdated things that needed to be updated. So if you can imagine, it was old, basically a hot mess. And the client had asked us if we could do some some minute design changes, and then they wanted to make the mobile more responsive because it wasn't that great. And then they also wanted to renew an old store that they had on the site. So they were like, it's all got the functionality there, we just need to bring it back to life, I guess. So yeah, I did all the design changes, and as a graphic designer and someone who had just learnt coding, but in frameworks like React and stuff, I was like, I don't really love this because I'm constrained to a theme. It was a Nevada theme website, and I do have permission from my boss to share screenshots of our conversation, but I said to him, I was like, this feels like I've got my hands tied behind my back because I feel like I can't really do what I want to do in terms of design. And he replied back saying, spoken like a true dev. So when it came to getting the store stuff set up, that was when I kind of really struggled and started to realize my knowledge of WordPress is not a lot, and WordPress is a massive, there's so many layers. So one of the first things that I kind of ran into was trying to add new categories to the store. I was running into a redirect issue, and then eventually I realized it was a plugin, an old plugin that was in there. It wasn't really doing anything, so I deactivated it. And then I was able to get to the right URLs for the categories. Once I was there on the category pages, then I wasn't able to see any of the products. I was adding products, I couldn't see anything, and I was like, what's going on? And then realising that the conditional logic in the Avada layouts was not set up properly. So I had to go in and rejig all of that. And it was a bit of a mess that was going on back there, but eventually I got it working and I was like, great, I can see all my products underneath my categories. And then the next issue that I ran into was trying to see my single products. So I couldn't see anything when I'd click into them. And then come to realise that the way that I had solutioned seeing all of my categories was incorrect, and so I had to go back and then fix that. And then the last thing was I wasn't able to see any category images in the title bar for the categories. So that one, it turns out that was a caching issue from my computer, and I spent more time than I cared to admit trying to fix that. And then when I asked my boss, hey, can you just check what's going on here? And he logged in, he was like, I can see it fine. What do you mean? And then my colleague could see it fine. I checked on my roommate's computer and she could see it fine. And I was like, I'm going to tear my hair out. So I'm sure we've all been there. And then I broke it. I broke this site, this horrendous site with all this stuff that's going on. So essentially, when it came to updating WooCommerce, I was then getting this error that there were some template files that were incompatible with the Avada. And I didn't realise Avada wasn't up to date. It doesn't show on the main update panel. And I had just assumed that everything that needs to be updated was in there. So I was like, I'm going to go update. And then I broke it. I broke the website, and this is a live website, by the way, guys. And so like immediately my heart dropped, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? But I had made a backup, so we used SiteGround. The client had used SiteGround, so I restored the backup immediately. Let my boss know, and then I tried to proceed to like debug, so kind of find why is it breaking. So change to the default theme and see like where the the error was, I guess. But I couldn't figure it out, so I ended up just asking my boss, like, can you talk me through how to debug in local? Because I had never done it before, and I just wanted some co-debugging, I suppose. So he took me through that process, and I guess like what I had researched had indicated that possibly it was an issue with WooCommerce in the version. So other people had indicated they had a similar problem with Avada and WooCommerce. So we were testing the versions and stuff. We ended up testing also like the PHP. Like we couldn't figure it out. And my boss ended up calling it that day and being like, look, we've spent too much time on this. I'm going to call it for today, and then we can keep going with it the next day. So that was actually kind of nice as a junior developer to have someone who's more experienced just recognising that they don't always know the answer straight away either. So it's a little bit validating. So some lessons and things I'd go back and tell myself. Common knowledge isn't always common knowledge. I think that this is really important to just establish, especially when you're a junior and you're learning, that you need a safe space to learn. And if you just assume that someone knows something, then they might feel uncomfortable asking about it. So the next thing, you don't know what you don't know. When you're a junior, you don't know a heck of a lot. So it's okay, and you'll get there. And the next one, and this is something I definitely struggled with, was just don't be stubborn, time block, and ask for help sooner rather than later. For me personally, I'm a little bit stubborn person, and I like to try and figure things out for myself, but it's definitely been a learning curve to recognise when you do need to reach out and ask for help. Knowledge gaps, so things I wish I had known before I started tinkering in this website. Learning about WordPress template hierarchy, that there's the beginner's guide to WordPress, which is a nice cheat sheet to reference. WordPress likes to hide stuff in places you wouldn't assume that it would be. So when I was trying to figure out the categories issue, this little categories, that was not on. So that was preventing me from seeing stuff as well. So, and then just debugging for a WordPress site is very different, and coming from a bootcamp where we didn't learn any WordPress stuff, it was a very unfamiliar process. So I guess some practical tips. I don't know what is going on with my slides. Some practical tips of some troubleshooting before you do anything, back up your site. So good thing I backed up my site before I broke the live one. But there's a number of reasons your bugs could be occurring. It could be a theme, it could be WordPress, it could be PHP, user error, a bunch of reasons. So instead of assuming that you might know the answer, just Google it. Just a quick Google and you might avoid yourself some hours. Use process of elimination to find your way to the answer. So, disable all your plugs, switch them back on one by one, switch to a default theme to see if the issue is with your plugin or a clash with your theme. Clear your browser, so clear your caches to see if that's why changes are not appearing, and if page links are broken or not found. Reset your permalinks and check for any interfering plugins. And another great thing is joining Facebook groups. So I joined the Avada one when I was working on this site, and that was really helpful for me to ask questions when I was getting stuck. And this is, I guess, more so in general for if you're a junior, just to help, ease the process of learning. For me in particular, I always ask, if this is a new or unfamiliar task, do I just need to ask more clarifying questions before I get started on whatever it is I'm doing? I always ask, are there any recommended resources? If somebody has used something before, can I use it too? Why not take advantage of somebody else's prior knowledge? Time block. So maybe just ask, roughly how long would you expect it would take me to do this? Have I spoken the problem out loud? Sometimes I'll find, I've just been thinking about something, and then as soon as I verbalise it, I answer my own question. I'm like, oh my gosh. have a day of break, like get up, go for a walk, stretch, remove yourself from the computer for a few minutes and then come back, and often you'll find that like you have a fresh perspective on what's happening. Is there someone that you can ask for advice? I know sometimes it's daunting to ask like your colleagues for advice, but like, is there someone who, if you did a boot camp with someone, can you like peer code with them, or like can you reach out to like, somebody else at another company that you might be able to, ask them if they can mentor you a little bit? Like that might be a good avenue to explore. And finally, if you just have spent too long on something, it's okay to ask for help, reach out. And yeah, be kind to yourself because you're still learning. And that is the end of my presentation.
For a second. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Sandra.
Questions?
Yeah, we've got a moment for a couple of questions while we change over to the next speaker. So did anyone have a question at all? I'll run it.
That was a lot of great advice, and it reminded me of when I was in the same position. So I also took a coding boot camp class and got my first web dev job like that. And do you think that there should be a coding boot camp course for WordPress? Because I've never seen that anywhere, and I also didn't learn.
I don't know if there does or doesn't exist one, but I would say I would appreciate having done one before going into industry. And then, yeah, obviously that, like you could see how much stuff was going on in that site. You just don't know what you're going to encounter in industry. And like for my agency in particular, like we do a little bit of everything. So yeah, it wasn't until 2 months into the job that I ended up, working on that. So I think it's a great idea.
And you probably didn't have PHP in your boot camp.
No,
Yeah,
we
same.
didn't, yeah.
We've got time for one more question if there are any. No? You can keep thinking in case you've got one for later. All right, once again, let's thank Sandra.